Last week we spoke about the use of the organization chart, how to build it, and then how to kind of use it as a strategy tool. Today we're going to talk about job descriptions. So here's just a reminder of how the job descriptions work. The 4 key functions is a place where all of your processes are listed, and organized into these 4 categories. This is a great exercise to do before you would even begin to build your organization chart, and certainly before you would do the job descriptions. So if you have not built out your 4 key functions, and all I mean is make a master list, make sure that you've listed out every process that you can identify, then the organization chart is a picture of all the positions, all the people. So this is a list of processes, the work that happens by subject area, and the organization chart is a picture of the people. So in a way, it kind of says who does what. Over here, we're thinking about the subjects that occur and organizing the process by subject area. Here in the org chart, you're identifying people. And how these 2 tools come together is we link the processes from the 4 functions list here to the positions on the chart, which assigns accountability for those processes and builds what we call a job description. So every box here on the chart will have processes linked to it from the 4 functions list. And on the 4 functions list, it doesn't really, you organize them by subject area, but it doesn't really matter who does what over here. We don't really care about that. Here's where that's decided, here on the org chart. So I'm going to show you a job description first, just as an example of one. So every time you select a box from the chart, it takes you to the job description. And when your job descriptions are fully built, they're going to look something like this. The job description's got 2 sections to it. There's strategic and tactical. The strategic section is for higher level work, managerial work, generally work that comes from the guiding the business function. So a managerial position like this one will have a lot of strategic work, managerial work, strategy, developing things, building things, and then maybe less tactical work. Because it's a managerial position, it should be doing not that much tactical work. So typically the proportion is somewhere between 90–80% at the most strategic, and 10 to 20 tactical for a full-time managerial position. A tactical position, like this one, may have a few strategic work items and may have none. It just depends on how you structure things. And then mostly tactical. So this is a non-managerial position, salesperson. They may have a few tactical, strategic things, but mostly the work should be tactical. If you have a situation where you've built a future organization chart, which you should, and then you are growing into that chart and you don't really have enough work, say, to keep a full-time manager in one box, so really what's happening is you have a person who is the manager, but then maybe they're also a salesperson, and maybe they're also the appointment setter. So their name is in this box, and this box, and this box. Still build this as if it was a full-time managerial position, and then just have their names or identify to them that they fill multiple roles. What you don't want to do is put all the tactical work of this position, sales, on this job description, and all the tactical work of appointment setter on this job description. Because then in a way you're kind of making a people-dependent position based on where your business is now. And what we want you to do is build it for the future, build it for where you're going, so it can help you kind of grow into that. And it also helps your employees kind of compartmentalize what they're doing if they're wearing multiple hats. So keep this as the managerial position with the managerial work, a lot of strategic work, and then this is the tactical and tell the person they fill both roles. So let's add a box to the org chart. I'm doing this because when I add a box, it's going to have a blank job description. So let's put it under a bottom position and save. So now I've added this box. When I select this box, There's nothing in this job description. So if you haven't built your job descriptions, this is what it looks like. First thing I want to show you is if you click this box, this is how you can change the title. So everything's click to edit on the job description page. Underneath the title is what we call the objective. So this is the purpose of the position. So just like your processes have an objective, the position has an objective as well. This field is a little bit, has a little bit more structure to it than the process objective field. So you see I can make like a list here of things if I wanted to. So you can structure this a little bit differently, and it's kind of done this way so that you can add in any way that you want what the objective is. So just a few guidelines around this, though. I would keep it short and specific. So think about the overall purpose of the position. Why does it exist? What is it here to do? Don't list the work that the position does. That's a mistake, I think, in the objective field. The work is listed down here in these sections. The work is the processes. So you're just being redundant if you kind of list out what happens here. Having said that, this is your field to use how you like. I've seen accounts where they've put hiring requirements and key specific goals and use this with a few paragraphs. And if you like it that way, then fine. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. And I've seen it just clear specific three-letter phrases or three-word phrases. So just know that this field is for kind of describing the overall goals or purpose of the position. There was this whole managerial mindset going around about a year ago where I can't remember who the teacher of this was, but they were saying that each employee should have three specific purposes, like to make sales, customer satisfaction. So not more than kind of three goals. Now there's probably multiple processes that they would have to follow to achieve those goals, like make more sales. But but this would be a place to list those things. What's your three objectives? So position title and then objective or purpose of the position. So how the job descriptions are built is we literally look over at the 4 functions list here and we choose the processes that each position is accountable for. So this is yet another reason why creating your lists over here first can be so important. Because if you haven't listed out all of your processes and you go to build your job descriptions, it's going to be harder because you won't have anything to choose. So to build the job descriptions, we go here to this icon called Add Existing Process. And it's called Existing because all of the processes we're going to add exist over here on the 4 functions already. So we go Add Existing. First thing we have to answer is, are you going to put this in the strategic or the tactical section? So we choose one. Then we hit the drop down here. And now I'm looking at all of my sub-functions from the 4 functions list. So these are every sub-function inside of all 4 key functions listed here. So what I would do if I was going to build this job description is I would go to the sub-functions that are related to this position. So even though all these sub-functions are by subject area and not really about who does what, you can still make that connection by thinking, okay, this is a salesperson or this is a position in the sales department. So most likely their processes are going to be in advertising, marketing strategy, and sales. If this is a position in the operations department, they do work in the field, then you're probably going to go to a sub-function related to that. So you go to the sub-function related to this position, and then I see all the processes listed that are in that sub-function. So I start with the top and say, is this position accountable for direct mail? If the answer is yes, then choose that. Then you can hit your control key and you can say, does this position do newsletters? Do they do Google Analytics? If it's no, skip that one. Do they do increasing average per sale? Yes. So you choose the processes that this position is accountable for. and then you go and hit Save in the bottom corner. Now what TouchStone has done is it's linked all these processes from the 4 functions list here to this position. You'll also notice that the color coding is here. So black, this is one that's been marked as complete. It's finished. Someone filled in this little box right here that says process documentation completed. You'll also see ones in blue still. So this is someone still working on this. It hasn't been fully documented yet. And then red, again, means nothing in it. So that's what this color coding is, and it shows up on the job description. If this is a managerial position that you're building, I think it's good to go add existing process and start with strategic. Hit the sub-function drop-down. A managerial position probably does training. So you might take the trainings that they do here and add those. They probably, you'd probably immediately go to this employee management. So this is in the guiding the business area, and so these are all the processes that are related to managing employees, so you choose those. Not all managers do all the management work, so you want to, most of the time I think you'll select them all and put them on each manager's job description, but if it's a situation where a certain manager doesn't do performance reviews for whatever reason, and it's not a people-dependent situation, it's a structural thing that you've decided the HR department's the only one who does that, then you skip that work. So then same idea, you just hit Save. So as you're going through this, maybe put in the strategic work first, so you're kind of going in order, and then choose the tactical work. Then remember that if it's a managerial position, it's probably going to have a lot of strategic work and a less tactical. You don't want to put the tactical work of a position underneath a manager on that manager's job description. So let me say that another way, because I get this question often. This person here is the manager of these 3 below. They're accountable for making sure that these people get their results. So the purpose of a manager is to ensure that the work of their subordinate positions happens in an effective way. They get work done through other people. So that's implied by the fact that they're the manager. The manager doesn't do all this work, though. This is done by other people. So there's no need to take all of this work and put it on this manager's job description, just to make the point that they're accountable for that work and making sure their employees get it done. It makes the manager's job descriptions just huge and for no reason inside of TouchStone. So what needs to be explained to managers is that it's their primary accountability to make sure all this work is happening effectively. All the processes are documented, all the employees are using the processes, they're trained in them, and they're getting the results of those processes. So here again, you don't want to put all this work of these positions on this job description. If you have a situation where you have a manager who also does technical work to a large degree, because of the size of the company, then give them this job description and this one, so they fill both of these roles. Okay, so let's go back here. So once you've listed out the processes, if you've made a mistake and you put something in strategic when it was supposed to be tactical, this is all just drag and drop, so you can just pull it up and pull it down and reorder it. What work you put in strategic versus tactical ultimately is up to you. The guidelines are, this is strategy work, managing employees. This is the work, the higher level work of a position. That's how we define it. Once you've built the job description, so you've gone through the 4 key functions list and you've linked all the processes to the correct positions, then just look at the job description and ask yourself, is there anything missing here? When you look at processes in lists like over here, you can see it in a certain way. I mean, you can see it in a pretty thorough way. But then when you take all those processes and link them to positions over here, you're seeing it in a whole different way. You're seeing it in terms of who does what and what the accountabilities of each position are. So when you look at it that way, you might notice that you've missed something. If you've missed something, you can obviously just go back to the 4 key functions and add it, or you can go right here where it says Add New Process, and I put in the name of the process. Then TouchStone's going to ask me which sub-function does it go on in the 4 key functions list. That's what this is for. So even though we're going to add this process name directly to this job description right now, TouchStone's still requiring you to keep your 4 functions list the master list. Every process in TouchStone is in the 4 key functions in one place or another. So I would hit the drop down here and say, okay, which sub-function does this process belong in? So I choose one and then I hit save. So now this process has been added right here, but it's also on the 4 key functions list as well. And you can see right here from this breadcrumb trail where it is. It's in getting the business and advertising. You'll also notice that on this process, the objective's missing because we didn't type it in. And I can see that because, look, it's blank there. Let me put it in between these two. You can see it more easily. These objectives are all been defined for these processes, but this one's missing. So once you build your job descriptions, if you see any objectives missing, go and fill those in. They're important to define what's in that process, what's it there for. So not only so you're clear, but so when anyone else is looking at it, they're clear. What's supposed to go in here? Where does it start? Where does it end? What is the result of it? So you just select that process, and then right here in the objective field, you'd put in the objective. Sometimes you miss the objectives when you're adding processes to the 4 functions list or when other people are doing it, but you see it quite clearly when you look at it from the job description page. You can see it's missing. Once this job description is built and you're kind of happy with the processes that are listed there, and it's not going to be perfect, like this is kind of an effort to create a first draft of this, you might say. You're always going to be changing it. You may decide once you've built the job descriptions that you've gotten a little too narrow with your titles, and maybe you want to make 2 processes into 1. That happens quite often. Sometimes the opposite is true, that you've built a process and you've made it too broad and you think, oh, I really need to break this apart because I really want it on 2 different people's job descriptions. So I want the work plans within here to be separated. So you can see it from this different perspective once the job description is built. Next thing to do is then kind of order the processes in order of priority. So this is one of the things I like to do. So I'll say, okay, the very first process on the strategic processes is going to be the management philosophy. I want to do that first. This one's already done, so let's drive back to the bottom. Then we want to do the verbal and written warning process and then employee lateness. Then I go down here and say, okay, these are all done. We're going to drag these to the bottom. This one's been started, so let's finish this one, and then we'll start in on the newsletters. So as your processes are in development, this is a good way to organize them on the job description so that you can see what the priorities are. Once they're finished, once the processes are done, you can reorder them any other way you want. You can put them in alphabetical order or workflow order. When all the job descriptions are finished, and what I mean by that is every process from the 4 functions list here has been linked to one position or another, and all of these job descriptions are complete, as best you can get them right now. That's a really good time to start in on documenting. You may have started that already, but if you haven't, I would say wait until you get to this result. Wait till you get all your job descriptions built. Then you can decide what the priority of documenting the processes is. You can also delegate at that point. So you can think sales department. I want the sales department as a team to start to work on their processes. Or you can say, all right, sales manager, identify 2 people within the department or whoever you think has got some aptitude for this and knows a lot about how to do sales well, and let's have them work on documenting processes over time. So strategize with your managers. If you don't have managers, strategize with your employees and start to think who should be involved in this. It takes time to document processes, and you want to get your people involved as best that you can. Even if it's an hour a week, it's good to get your people involved because you're going to be capturing what they know, but more importantly, you're going to start to get buy-in to the processes. You're going to start to get interest in them. And if you position it in the right way, you're going to get enthusiasm about it. So one technique I like to use when you start in on documenting is you can go to a position, you can say, okay, let's put these in order of priority, how we're going to document them. Then you've identified who's going to help you with it, which people. Is the marketing assistant going to help? Do you have 2 marketing assistants and one's going to help and one's not? Decide who's going to do it. Go to the title of the very first process, that's the priority, the first one you want to work on. Put a little parentheses here. Put the person's initials who's going to be working on it and give it a tentative due date. So just a due date for when you want that first draft to be done by. And it can be, you can structure this due date any way that you like that, and then you save it. So what's happened here, close the parentheses, is this person's initials in the title with a tentative due date. If we go back and look at the job description, you're going to see that right here, and they are too. So you can say to this person, log into TouchStone, go to your job description, click it open. Very first process at the top of the list is going to have your initials and the tentative due date. Go to that process and start to document it. So all this person, all this employee really needs to know is how to log into TouchStone, give them their own username and password, restrict their access if you want, give them only access to this position that they fill, and say, click that process and document it. It becomes super easy for them to learn how to use TouchStone in that respect because they don't really have to know all the ins and outs. You've already identified the processes for them, and all they need to do is document it. When they're finished with this, they can go to the title and say, review. That's assigned to you that you need to review it. Once you're finished, once you're happy with what they've done, you go delete all this. Mark this as complete, drag it to the bottom, and go on to the next one. So this is a way of doing process development management, you might say, within TouchStone. There's no need to export lists and have big, fancy project plans on how to get it all done. There's no reason to do that. Stay in TouchStone and do it. Just identify processes with people's names, give it a tentative due date, and have them go document. I had a company that I was managing this for, just one of our users not too long ago. They had, I don't know, they have 4 departments probably, maybe 50 positions, and they did exactly what I just said. They identified, the managers identified within each department 2 or 3 people to be working on the processes. Each manager was kind of managing and assigning processes to those positions, one in each department, and I was kind of overseeing it, just answering questions, making sure that it was on track. The employees went in and started documenting. They did 1 process a week in the best examples. The more complicated processes took, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. They had maybe a total of 10 people doing it. Over a 4 or 5 month period, everything was documented. And more importantly, everyone had a hand in it, which was very useful, and the quality was very high. So this kind of, project management within TouchStone really works. If your business is smaller and you do this to a smaller degree, then that's totally fine too. Use 1 person. But what you're doing is you're getting a routine for it, and slowly over time the documentation happens. So let's go back to this position. So a few more kind of technical things about the job descriptions. If you want to remove a process, click this little X sign here, and then just remove it. Say OK, and then that's gone. It's not gone from TouchStone forever. It still is on the 4 functions list. So you're just removing it from this job description. Remove, OK. So that's what these little remove buttons about, and you get those by just hitting the remove X. The job description also exports, so all these normal export features that you see all throughout TouchStone. In addition, you have this cool little feature called Print Operating Manual for the position, or Print it to Word. Once it's in Word, you can save it as a PDF and have an external operating manual. So what happens when you use this function is it will print the job description, which is like a table of contents for the operating manual. Then it's going to print all the tools inside of every process on that job description. So you'll see work plans, checklists, and it prints them in order. And then you can, again, save this as a PDF and have an external operating manual. People need, I think users need these export features because it makes you feel comfortable about getting your stuff out of TouchStone if you decide not to use it anymore, which we totally respect and understand. Having said that, when you export something, especially an operating manual, now you've got another version in a sense. You've got a paper hard copy version. And that can be useful for a certain period of time, but it's not too long before that gets outdated, and it's just another version. Most people will save these on their desktop, and now you're kind of back to this routine of having processes all over the place, and no one knows what the most current version is. So hopefully it doesn't escalate to that as long as you continue to use TouchStone. But just remember, the minute you export it, now it's, there's another version out there. What I like to do instead is if you want somebody to have access, be able to study, review, and see their processes, give them access to TouchStone. So go to Account Administration and add them as a user. Even if you can create a user here in Account Administration and you can call it allcompanyuser@user.com and give everyone a generic password and give read-only access to every position here on the org chart. And then hundreds of people could log in with that general user ID and see and have access to the job descriptions. You could do it by department. You could create a sales. So this is if you're worried about running out of users. Everyone gets 10 users, which goes a long way. If you want more than that, which people should have more than that if you have a bigger company, then remember always to contact us and ask for a discount because we give discounts on upgrading users. But having said that, you can create a general user and give it restricted access and then have people be able to access their processes through that. Another thing to do is if you have an employee who's working on a process, say, let's go here, and they want you to look at what they've done, teach them to go to the work plan or whatever tool or the process overall that they want you to review for them or look at. Go up here to this URL and just go right-click copy and then paste it into an email and send it to you. And then all you have to do is make sure you're logged into TouchStone and then click that link or cut and paste that into the address bar and you'll go right to the process they're referring to. That's preferable to me than going here, export, and I'm going to email you this whole thing, and then suddenly we have this version of this we're working on outside of TouchStone, or worse yet, print it and leave it on your desk. It's better to teach them to work in this paperless environment because that's what TouchStone's about. It's about things being up to date all the time, saving paper, having an electronic version of things. While we're on this screen, I just want to show you one thing related to the job descriptions. When you're on a process, like this one, this is employee lateness, I can always see where this is on the 4 functions list by this trail here. I always know from this trail where it lives on the 4 functions. It's in the guiding the business function, it's in the employee management sub-function. If I want to see what job descriptions it's been linked to in a more global fashion, you go here to link to job description. And now I can see this is the org chart, and I can see this position right here. It's been linked to this. So you can always go and look at one job description at a time if you want to. But if you know it's linked to multiple positions or you just want to verify it's linked to the correct position, you just go link to job description. I can see it here. I can also remove it from here and add it, strategic or tactical link. I can add it to a whole nother position right here. So this is kind of a good help tool to see which job descriptions each process has been linked to. Another exercise to do that I think is a good idea is once all your job descriptions have been built, just go, and this is my demo company, so this has a ton of processes. I think most, even the larger businesses, wouldn't have this many in one function. I would just select the process here. First one on the list, go link to job description. Is this on the right job descriptions? Yeah, great. Back, go to the next one. Is this on the right job descriptions? Great. If it's not, add it. Ooh, it's missing from there. Somehow we missed that. Okay, close, go back, go to the next process. Is this on all the right job descriptions? So just do a once through. As you saw me doing it there, it's like maybe 5 seconds per process. But it's useful because it allows you to kind of look at everything from here and say, did I get it on all the right job descriptions? Did I put it on the wrong job description? Did I miss one? So you can go through one at a time and just do a double check of your job descriptions. All right, so let's talk for a few minutes here on how to use the job descriptions, because that's the most important thing. The building of them is great, but if you don't implement and use them, then it just becomes this strategic exercise that has no value. So using of the job descriptions is essential to the success of your processes, really. So one of the ways to use them is to prioritize which processes to work on and who's doing what. So we talked about that. You can assign people to complete job descriptions and assign them processes to complete, and over time document all of your processes. You can also use the job descriptions to prioritize what to document first, second, and third. So I could look at this organization chart and I can say, all right, well, Q4 is coming up and we've got to hire this operations manager in Q4, so let's document these processes now so we can be ready with the training to ensure this person's success. So that's one way, by priority. If you're looking at a tree like this one, so where you've got entry level, junior, senior, always start with the bottom one first. So document these processes first, then move up to here, then move up to here. This is just general kind of good protocol when it comes to document. You want to start with the simplest of things first, and then move up, and then move up. That would hold true for just a regular department like this one. Start with these two boxes first, document this tactical work, and then move up to this one. One of the results you get with the managerial positions is a lot of the managerial processes are linked to all the managerial positions. So when I go here to operations manager, performance review, written warnings, management philosophy, these things, when I document this, it's going to be done for every manager it's linked to, everyone who does a performance review. So when you're doing your managerial processes, if you have managers in place, it's a good team exercise. You get the library content, which is a great place to start, and then maybe once a week you could meet with your managers for an hour and sit and think, okay, how does this look to us? How do we want to do this? And document those managerial processes. The second way to use the job descriptions is as a management tool. So managers manage processes. That's what their primary accountability is. It's not to manage people, but it's to manage processes by which people get results. If managers think of themselves as managing people and their personalities and who does what good and who doesn't and all the difficulties, that's where management becomes this big bear that all of us can't stand. It's a much cleaner, simpler, more effective result for your managers to consider that they manage processes and they teach the people to use those processes. It gives an extraordinary amount of power to the manager, or a feeling of control, because they can use that process to make their employees better, to decide how well they're doing. Can they do it better? They can use it to empower the employees. So with that concept in mind, the job description becomes the most essential tool for a manager. The job description is a complete listing of all the processes that position is accountable for. And if it's my role as a manager to manage with processes, then wouldn't this be the most amazing tool ever to have? Because I see this complete list of what each person's accountable for, and I can start to use it to help them. Once the processes are documented, it goes even further, because I can then say, this is not just what you do, but this is how you do it. Let's talk about this together. How can it be better? What's missing here? So the conversation, the management conversation, becomes about process and about innovation and about effectiveness and about empowering people to do more and to do it better in a more efficient way. So this job description becomes the tool that managers will use for new employee training and ongoing training. It becomes the tool that is the central focus for every meeting. When I sit down and communicate with employees about what they're doing and how they're doing and how it could be better and how fabulous they are, or how there's an issue in certain places, the job description is always what we're talking about. So for new employee training, the job description becomes the checklist for what they need to be trained on. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I'm going to show you when we get to the system of the week a tool we have in the library for that. So when you hire a new employee, you can take them through an onboarding process where they're given maybe an HR training on the employee handbook, and they get their keys and they're explained the rules and the policies and all of that. That's not training. That's just new employee training. Then they get an on-the-job training, or we call it a job description training, where they're literally trained in each of these processes, one at a time. And they're taken through how you do it. The manager teaches them with the process. So when I'm teaching someone how to generate referrals, you may start with, like, review these 2 work plans. Go through them and kind of look at the tasks and look at how this process works. Study it. Memorize the scripts. Watch the training video. Listen to the audio. So they're studying the process. And I may have decided that through my experience that it takes 10 hours for someone to learn how to generate referrals using our process. So I'll have them study this for a while. Then maybe I have them watch someone else do it, listen to someone else do it. Maybe we do some role plays. So using the content of the process, they're trained in how to generate referrals. And you go through every process one at a time, teaching the employee what their work is, basically. It may take a week to go through all this. It may take 5 months. It depends on what the position is. But you can't get away from this. The training is a necessity, and the documentation of the process makes it easier. It's almost, I can't remember the statistic I heard the latest, but it's something like 75% more efficient or something. What that means is if you train someone with documentation, they've learned 75 times faster than if you teach them with no documentation. Also, hidden facts around that are the loss and the waste from lack of training and lack of documentation. So you can't even quantify to a certain degree how much inefficiency is occurring by this just watch me do it training, by lost time, mistakes, issues with customers, whatever the situation is. So these job descriptions, again, new employee training. It's like a checklist. Check it off. Did this one, did that one. Once the employee's trained, move on to the next one. Then ongoing training. So these job descriptions can be the point of all of the conversations for employees. So we have a process in the library for one-on-one meetings, which I think is a fabulous thing for employees. Even if you just do them once a month, I think once a week is great. But these one-on-one meetings are where a manager sits down with the employee and says, let's talk about how it's going. They are a leader to the employee. They show them. They talk to them. How are you? How's your job going? How are things been happening? What do you think needs to be better? Then we go through and talk about their processes. You may make like a process of the month where you just sit down and talk about referrals. It's already documented. People are using it. How could this be better? Let's just discuss it. Let's look at the documentation. If the employee's having an issue, like say they've been thoroughly trained in this referral process, their counterpart, another salesperson, is generating 10 referrals a week, and this employee is getting 0 or maybe 1. So these are the types of statistics which become valuable when you have a documented process. Because if I didn't have a documented referral process, I might just say to myself, well, that guy's just better, right? He can do it better. But when I do have a documented process, there's one person may be better than another, but the process itself, if done correctly, generates a certain result. So I can then, with power or conviction, say to the employee, you can be better. Other people using the same process get 10 a week. What's wrong with the process here? How can we make it better for you? Let's look at it. Tell me what doesn't work for you. Tell me what's hard. Tell me what we can change to help you be more effective. I believe in you. So you notice the tone of my voice is not, what are you doing wrong? You're not as good as him. You should get 10 a week. You know, you're not doing this correctly. What's wrong with you? You're always late. It's not you're bad. It's what's wrong with the process here. How can we fix it? How can we make you better? So that's a management technique that comes from having documented processes, but it's also very encouraging because the manager doesn't have to make it me against you or you're wrong. Because the minute I say that, the employee just shuts down. And then the excuses start coming up and the accusations, and then we're all in this, you know, crazy personality battle. So use the job description as an ongoing management tool to reinforce processes, to innovate processes when necessary, to communicate about what's working for the employee and what's not working for the employee. This will promote this kind of process-driven management style, which is a beautiful thing. It creates consistency in how managers manage because throughout the organization, everyone's doing it the same way, and they get the same treatment. And then it's also going to reinforce the processes themselves because we're talking about the documentation all the time. So use the job descriptions. Number one, use them for prioritizing your process documentation, delegating process documentation, managing the process documentation, and then use them for training, for management, new employee training, ongoing training. There's a tool that I want to show you here quickly in the library. It's in the Guiding the Business library, and it's right here. I've edited the title to make it position specific. Salesperson training. So you go to the library and you'll see the process. It's called New Employee Job Training. So I go and download this process and put it into training. And now I've got a copy of this process from the library. Then the training for every position on your org chart is different because the processes are different. So you want to create this type of training process, which is the training of the job description basically, for every position on the org chart. So here I've got sales, marketing, senior tech. So I go here to the title, and then I insert the position name. And then I save it. By editing the title, it helps me to then customize this for this position. But then also it allows me to go back into the library and get that process again so I can have the template again. Because the minute you edit the title of a library process, it becomes available in the library again because TouchStone doesn't know that it doesn't already exist. So this is kind of a trick around the library. So I can get another copy of this and then kind of change it for, edit the title and change it for that position. So let's go to this one because it's the example. So the template has structure to it. And what you're going to do is basically take every process from the job description here and put them in as tasks. I even did little hyperlinks to them. But this is kind of the structure of the training. So think about what the total training time would be for department and company innovation. And you can look at the content of that process and decide what is involved in this. How long do you think it will take? The more you do the training, the more information you'll have about how long it takes. Then there's this section which you can use or not use, just background and relevance. Explain the importance of innovation to the business culture. For referrals, explain how the business grows with referrals and how happy clients promote referrals. This may be in the content of the process itself, but you can kind of give a highlight for that. Then study time. How much time do you want them to study the process? Teaching. How are you going to teach it? So you use the documentation to teach. So you're going to go over the work plans. You're going to give examples. You may do a role play. You're going to have them fill out the forms. You're going to have them practice with it. They may watch someone else do it for a certain period of time. Good managers are good teachers. They learn how to teach. And you know what? In all the years I've been doing this, it's something I know is true. To teach something, you don't necessarily have to have spent 20 years doing that work. A good manager is an effective teacher. Teaching teachers can be more exciting and motivate and teach things well because they have the teaching techniques. So when you tell your managers, just go train this person, not only they don't really know how to teach it. So this kind of structure can give them some basics on how to teach. Have them think about it. What's the best way to learn this? And then think about a test, if that makes sense for the process. How will you know if the employee has learned it or not? Think about how to test them on the tools in the process. Have them do a role play of the scripts. Have them fill out the form and show you how it's done. Have them recite to you how the process works. So go through this for every process on the job description that it makes sense for. This seems probably like a lot of work, but in the end, think about how valuable this is. It may take you for one position, maybe 4 or 5 hours to sketch out a training like this. But imagine when you know it's right. So you sketch it out, you do it a couple times, it works. You can, number one, and this is one of the most valuable things I think small business owners could ever have, I know how much time it takes me to train someone. And I ultimately know how much money because I can put the money to the time. This is huge because you know the time and money it's going to take you to scale your business. You know that if you let go of that employee that's been a thorn in your side and doing everything wrong for the last 6 years, you know that you can hire someone new, someone more effective, because he shouldn't have been hired in the first place. And it's going to cost you a certain amount of money. But you go in with confidence because you know that. So this type of training is useful to that degree because it helps you to scale your business and understand the financial consequences. It significantly improves the training, obviously. I mean, anyone who would argue with that is crazy. This significantly improves the training. So it makes your employees efficient, faster, and for longer. It also helps you from making bad hiring decisions. Hopefully your recruiting and hiring has dealt with that to a certain degree, but once you get someone into a training like this, it's super obvious within the first couple days whether they're going to get it or not, because they won't be able to do this right here, and they don't do it well. And you start to see issues come out with them that you may not have noticed in the hiring, and it comes out fast. If you do watch this person training, it could take you 6 months to figure out whether someone's working well or not. If you do it this way, you're going to see it right away. So this process is in the library under the guiding the business function. Another thing, there's many ways to do this in TouchStone. This is just one thing, one way. Here on the home screen, if you have control panels set up, you can have a manager go in, access the salesperson training. This is a checklist. So I just took the work plan and made it into a checklist. I go to this checklist, I put this person's name in, and then I can check off as I do this. So this is checking off the processes from the job description as I do it, and then save it. And now this is in TouchStone saved. So this is another way to do it. You can build a checklist and check it off as you go. Then anybody who has access to it can look and see that the salespeople have been trained and they've been checked off as they've been trained. Another way to do it is you can go in here through management review, and you can literally just go one process at a time and put these little check marks. So if for whatever reason you don't want to do the how are you going to teach it and all of that, or maybe you do that but you don't want to use that checklist, you can do it here as well. So we're going to, as we get further and further into the trainings, we're going to talk more about the use of this, but the tracking of training and the completing of those checklists can all happen here in the control panel and in the management area. Next week, we are going to get into documenting processes, how to document well. So this is going to be broken up into two sections. We're going to do work plans and checklists first, and then in the second week, we're going to finish up the other process tools. So here I'm going to be talking about the basics of how to document a process well, but then I'm also going to be discussing, technically how to do that in TouchStone. So at this point in the webinar series, if you have employees that you want them to be learning how to document, this is a good time to have them maybe come on to the webinar and learn about that. Because this is primarily going to be just about how to document using the process tools and how to do that well. So your employees are welcome to come and listen on. Any questions? I've got about 5 or 6 questions that are kind of unrelated to what we're talking about here, so I'm going to answer those offline. I'll send people emails. But before I let you go, any more questions about using of the job descriptions? Someone's just commenting that it's a whole new way to manage, is essentially what they're saying. And yes, that's true. It is. It's a whole new way to manage. But it's an effective way. And most businesses out there, if you ask them how they manage, they can't really articulate that. Each manager does it differently. So this gives management a purpose. It gives you a structure, a method for management, and that can be just invaluable in a business. So even though it may sound overwhelming and maybe like a whole new way, now's the time to do it. As you build your org chart, as you build your job descriptions, if you have managers in place now, sit with your managers and come together as a team and build a consistent philosophy and teach how to manage with job descriptions.